Auburn fans are disgusted with Hugh Freeze right now. He recently did an interview where the topic was brought up about the amount of pressure he felt he was under and what his expectations were entering his third season as Auburn's head coach. And he said, "I'm not a fool. I think we've got to go to a bowl game." And for a program that has the amount of resources that Auburn has to invest into recruiting and the transfer portal, you expect for the goals to be a lot higher than at least trying to go 6-6 and making it to the Birmingham Bowl, because that's the bare minimum. And even if Hugh Freeze doesn't believe that his squad is where they need to be in order to be a lot better than a bowl eligible team, you don't have to flat out be honest about it. You could kind of keep that to yourself and give your normal coaches speak answer. You could have said that we're trying to win as many games as possible, instead of lowering the bar to where your fan base doesn't even believe that you have trust that your roster is good enough to be competitive this year. And Brian Harsin's put this program in a really bad spot to where when Hugh Freeze took this job, in my opinion, this was never going to be a 3-year rebuild. It was always going to take 4 years to turn this thing around. And Hugh Freeze even alluded to that in this interview. He said that the past recruiting classes that were brought in before him weren't even top 25, which he was wrong about that. They were in the top 25, but I feel he misspoke. What I believe he was trying to say is that the past recruiting classes that Brian Harsin's brought in weren't good enough to be competitive in the deepest conference in college football, which he was right. Brian Harsin's tried to recruit at Auburn like he was recruiting at Boise State. He tried to get a bunch of 3-stars and turn them into studs. He under-recruited the offensive line. He didn't care about recruiting at all in his show, because before he got fired, Auburn was dead last in the SEC in recruiting, and the first recruiting class he brought in was one of the worst that they've had in the last decade. Now, of how well Hugh Freeze has recruited his first 2 years as the head coach at Auburn, it sets them up to get more of those guys on the field this year, along with the veterans that they have sprinkled in that are going to be playing. And then it sets you up for what should be a really big 2026 campaign. This year, I feel what the realistic expectation should be for Auburn at least should be winning 8 games, because it's not like you have a completely young roster. You do have a lot of veterans on defense. You got one of the better offensive lines that you've had in the last couple of years. If you can get some competent quarterback play out of either Jackson Arnold or Deuce Knight, you're definitely going to be able to be a lot better than, what Hugh Freeze made this team out to be in his comments in this interview. And the situation that Hugh Freeze is in right now at Auburn gives me reminiscent shades of the situation Billy Napier was in around this same time last year. Remember, he was on the hot seat. Florida had regressed in the win column. They went from 6-7 year one to 5-7 in year two. Same thing just happened with Hugh Freeze as well. You had a similar situation at quarterback. Graham Mertz, a veteran, he started a few games but wasn't that good at Wisconsin. You had the freshman phenom and DJ Lagway. You got that in Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight. And with how tough Florida's schedule looked on paper, you didn't think Billy Napier had a chance in hell at being able to survive another year. But he was able to exceed expectations, and he won 8 games, and we could see the same thing happen for Hugh Freeze this year at Auburn. Auburn isn't a sinking ship. He's done things the right way in terms of recruiting, how he has gone about utilizing the transfer portal, but Auburn fans are getting a little bit restless now, where you want to see a more return on your investment. And that's understandable, which is why I don't fault Auburn fans for feeling the way that they do about these comments. It doesn't really give you any more hope about this team that you've had in the last couple of years. You want this team to be back competing for national championships. You look at your arch rival Alabama and you're telling yourself, why can't we be as good as them when we have nearly similar resources to what they do? And you get tired of losing to them in the Iron Bowl. Eventually you want to start seeing the ROI with Hugh Freeze. When you made the hire, you already got a little bit of backlash for it because of what went wrong during his tenure at Ole Miss. And he was supposed to be the Nick Saban stopper. But, his first 2 years have been a little bit of a disappointment. He's known to be an offensive guru. So he should be able to elevate the amount of talent that he has on this team. But with how deep this conference is now, it's going to be a 4-year process for Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I believe this year they'll go 7-5, 8-4 is their ceiling. And then 2026, when you get Deuce Knight in his second year or Jackson Arnold in his second year under Hugh Freeze, and you get more of your younger talent developed and they're a lot bigger, that's really when you can make that big push for the SEC title and potentially a playoff spot. It's the same situation that Florida finds themselves in right now. Success doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't seem to happen in 3 years in the SEC. Yeah, you've seen Rhett Lashley and Curt Cignetti have a lot of success early during their tenures with their new programs, but they're not coaching in the SEC. The SEC is just such a different animal, especially like last year when you saw Auburn lose a lot of one-possession games. And if they would have had better quarterback play, things would have looked a lot differently. We saw Florida have a lot of those similar troubles year 2 under Billy Napier. I just see a lot of overlap between where Billy Napier was in 2024 and where Hugh Freeze is right now, entering his 3rd season at Auburn. That's why I'm more bullish on the future of Auburn than what most are. You got to understand that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes you got to take 2 steps backwards to take 10 steps forward. And I believe Billy Napier even said this when he was doing an interview with Josh Pate last year, and we saw that happen on the field. But with these comments, though, I'm a little bit disappointed in them myself. You don't have to flat out say, yeah, we're aiming to make it to the Birmingham Bowl when bowl games are considered to be meaningless now. So getting to a bowl game shouldn't really be what the expectations are. You could have just said our expectations or what everybody else's expectations are to compete for a national championship, even if you don't believe that. But to just say we're trying to make it to a bowl game, it's just really disappointing because it shows that you don't really trust your team that much. And as a player, I'll be looking at him a little bit different after making these comments. You don't think we're that good, coach?